All right, welcome to today's podcast. I'm thrilled to announce our special guest, Javier Gonzalez. Javier is a Mexican-American, El Paso-based, Emmy-winning and Sundance Grand Jury-winning producer with over 20 years of experience in the American and Mexican film industry. We're really excited to have you here, Javier. Thank you so much for joining. Is there anything else you would like to add to a little introduction about yourself?
Thank you. Great to be here. Yeah, I mean, lately I basically do both. I do docs and narrative. Mostly, my doc work is more on the studio side, and narrative I basically work mostly in independent sector. You know, between the narrative movies I make are usually between 1 million and 3 million budgets. And yeah, doc and narrative producer. I spend almost half and half my time doing both.
Is there a preference for you between which one you personally enjoy more?
No, I like doing both because whenever I'm on the other one, it feels like a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
You know, so I really like going back and forth. I did only narrative for a long time, for 15, 16 years, and I was definitely very happy to mix it up.
Right. So it's when you have when you're on a doc, you want a fiction. When you want on a fiction, yes. You want a doc.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
Yeah, it's cool, and especially now that docs are so well funded in most parts of the world, but especially in the U.S., the doc budgets are just much higher than they used to be. So it really is very pleasant.
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about your journey into the film industry and how you got into working in narrative and docs as well?
I took this course at New York Film Academy in New York City in 2004, I think it was. Yeah, 2004 to 2005. And when I was there, a friend's roommate was a producer, and he got me my first job on the musical Across the Universe, the Julie Taymor movie in New York. And then I just kept working as a PA and, slowly worked my way through the jungle.
And did you go to film school?
No, I went to college in Mexico City, but in Mexico, it's like in Europe where you go straight to grad school.
Yeah. So
I went to law school and I didn't like it. It's a 5-year program, and just right after law school, I moved to New York and started working as a PA.
And do you think that it's important to go to film school, or nowadays you could get away with not going to film school?
I get asked that question a lot. I mean, what I tell people is I think going to undergrad film school is very wise, because you can graduate and you're still very young, and it tends, especially in on this side of the world. I know in Europe most universities are free, but I would not. When people ask me if they should go to grad school to do a master's at film school, I only say to do it if you're a billionaire, because it's so expensive right now. But I do think if you go to an undergrad program, then by the time you're done, you're 21, 22. Then you can. It's less of a problem. But you go to grad school and you graduate from whatever, NYU, USC grad school, or McGill in Canada, you name it, you're 30, 31 years old. There's no guarantee that anybody will finance your movie, and you're $500,000 in debt. I don't think that's wise.
So there's pros and cons to it, but the earlier you get into film school and the earlier you get out and start your career might be the
it's just, because, and the other thing that I think is great is if you do it as for your college, for your proper university, is of the connections you make.
Right.
I'm sure, and that's everywhere in the world. And if you go to, film school in Rotterdam or Paris or Mexico City, the most people, you always read about those stories, that obviously doesn't apply to me, but a lot of those people make movies with the kids they went to college with for a long time. And that's obviously very valuable.
Yeah, no, I think I can relate to that. I went to, I did a master program. My bachelor degree was in climate change and sustainability sciences. And then I was like, I'm not sure if I wanted to continue that career path. And I wanted to get into the film industry. And I found this, this 1 year, 10-month course in Spain that I came to do. And honestly, from my experience there, the only things that I took out of it are the connections that I made there that I now am constantly seeing on sets wherever I go in Barcelona. I'm shooting with the same people that I went to film school with, but the technical skills or the creative skills, I don't think I really learned anything new at film school.
I mean, if it's a 1-year program, I think it's great. That's also a very good idea.
Like in and out. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's also the I mean, there's a lot of shitty parts of this industry. You know, there's a lot of challenges, but that's kind of it's in most parts of the world, especially now that you can make movies digitally and they don't cost, not all of them cost a fortune, is that the barriers of entry to enter are very, very low. Yeah. You know, that's the great part, and that goes hand in hand with not having to, you know, to have gone to a high wattage film school anywhere in the world. But it's also, but I also tell a lot of people, because I get asked that a lot, you know, friends of my parents or whatever, or anybody that I meet randomly. I mean, I tell them, if it's money you're going to spend on clothes anyway, and you're independently wealthy, then sure. I mean, I would have loved to do that. You know, being able to, I mean, imagine how great if you can, you know, you can go to that amazing film school in Poland, Lodz, you know, and you're not from there, and you have the money to live in Europe for 3-4 years. I mean, that's phenomenal. Everybody would love to do that.
It's like, I think it's a beautiful opportunity, but one that that not everyone has access to.
And you have to understand that also it's very different. Even if you enter the corporate side of film, you know, where you try to go to London or LA and then work at a talent agency or at a studio or at a film finance company or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not similar to going to law school or doing an MBA, where you're basically kind of guaranteed a job. You know, you can still, you can go to USC film school and still not even, you know, not get a shitty job.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's why, you know, especially in the US. So I just say, I mean, if you have to, if you want to make movies, you should just make a movie.
Yeah. And I think I remember one of my teachers, it was a VFX class that, you know, it was an introduction to VFX, and I got a call from a friend who's saying that he needed an assistant director on set. And I went to my teacher and I was like, I'm going to go shoot this and be an assistant director. And he told me, you're going to learn a lot more going to set than you are sitting down in this class. So
yeah, that's the best example.
Yeah. And after he told me that, I basically spent the rest of the year just blowing off class and going to set, because that's how I learned. It's a quick way to learn as well.
There's no excuse right now. Like, you can make a movie with your iPhone.
Exactly.
You know?
The barriers of entry are low, and it's opened the floodgates to so many new storytellers, and not even new storytellers, just the people who didn't have the opportunity to tell stories now do. And we're seeing a wide range of different types of films coming out, and it's quite nice to see.
The thing I think now is what people, especially younger people, will start doing and pivoting towards, what's very important, is being social media savvy. Yeah. You know, I mean, it changes very quickly every couple of years. But for example, I'm seeing the people I know that are the ones, my friends and colleagues and or whatever, and you know, people that I know of, the people that know how to publicize it smartly, you know, and not gratuitously on social media, are doing very well for themselves. So I think going forward, figuring out how to do that is your time and money will be better spent, as opposed to, you know, going to an old school grad school. Definitely. You know, maybe because you have to, I mean, that's the way the world is right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon.
Definitely.
You know, so like doing an internship for some company that's great at social media, you know, or I don't know, just figuring out a way to kind of tick that box before you start making your own stuff. Yeah. I think that is very, very valuable, because
key skill.
Yeah, that's the world we're living in isn't changing. Well, that's how I heard about NPA.
Yeah.
You know, you guys do a great job, you know, about showing the world what you do, you know, but not being too on the nose about it. Yeah. That's all very, very valuable and necessary too. Definitely. Because you can make the best movies or shows or whatever, and if they don't get wide distribution, there's no way in hell for anybody to know about it.
Right.
You know, you can't assume. I mean, that's another thing I always tell younger kids is, don't assume that everybody's going to look for you and look at your IMDb credits. Like, nobody gives a shit about that, you know?
Yeah.
you can never assume that, even though if you directed or produced what you think was a masterpiece that premiered at Sundance or at Rotterdam or wherever, if you don't let people know about it, they will not care and they will never find out.
That's very true. And nowadays, more than ever, social media is such a easy skill to learn that if you can harness that, you can get your projects out further than ever before.
Yeah, and I think it's to enter the industry. It's what is. You obviously have to get on set, right? But the thing that is very good to know, and what I also encourage kids to find out sooner rather than later, is if you want to work more on the technical side, for example, if you want to be an assistant camera, a sound mixer, work in post-production, or if you kind of think you want to be a producer, a director, and there you should offer to work for free for somebody that does the same thing.
Right.
And most people are nice. I mean, obviously, it'll be hard for a sound mixer to bring you onto a big set, but you can get an internship at a post-production house, or it's not difficult to work for to offer to drive around a producer, or to read scripts for a director.
Yeah. It's the opportunities are there, and we got to take them.
Yeah. And people reach out to people. Everybody's available. That's another thing I tell. Just don't be afraid to contact people. And most people in the world are cool with helping young kids. It's weird. If some 40 or 45-year-old reaches out to you, then you're probably going to ignore it. The world is very cruel. But if you see some college kid that's eager and that's how I meet in a lot of stuff I wind up working on. People just reach out to me. They find a way to get to me. Yeah, and it winds up more often than not, it works out great.
Yeah, you never know where something can go.
Yeah,
and you've worked on various productions and different capacities, and over the last 20 years, which role do you think for you do you find the most fulfilling? And in your growth from PA to now, you've touched on a lot of different roles. So which one for you do you think is like where you prefer?
I really like. That's also love-hate, right? I like the making of movies, or series or documentary series. So I do really like being on set, but I prefer it now that I'm older and have children. That the times are civilized. I hate doing night shoots, but I definitely where I'm happiest is in the making of the movie and or series. Preparing and being on set. And now, since I started working more in the doc space, the post part of it is fascinating. And but I just, because I used to for a long time, I would finish production and then that would be it. Then I hand it off to somebody else. But in doc world, I'm more involved until delivery. And it is very, very interesting. What I've done very little of, and I honestly don't know if I would like it or not, but I've done very little development work. So I don't know, but I really do like the making of things.
Yeah, and in the doc space as well, and oftentimes in doc space, the post production is where there's a full another rewrite of the project, because you spend so much time thinking of what you're gonna film, what you're gonna do. You start following the journey, you start filming, and then once you're in post, you have all this footage that you have to kind of puzzle back into a new story, and there's a new rewrite there often.
Yeah, it's inverted, because especially the comparison what I do, for example, like a narrative indie feature and a doc feature of the same budget. Yeah. And the narrative indie feature, 70% of the money spent on prep and production and 30 on post. And in doc world, it's the other way around. Yeah. There's some, for example, on Still, the Michael J. Fox doc that I did for Apple and Concordia. Yeah. There, the interviews in doc style, we filmed less than 25 days. Yeah. And I was on that project for a year and a half.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What was it like working on that documentary, especially with such a beloved public figure?
It was amazing. It was just it was a dream come true. The whole part of it was crazy because I did a doc with my friend Miles Esty, who's a big documentarian. We did this doc called Second Chance that Ramin Bahrani directed and sold to Showtime. So then Miles got hired to show run Navajo Police that I'm doing a guest lecture for NPA in September. and that was a Concordia production, and they the line producer had to step off still. So Concordia, I literally got the email, would you be interested in working on a Michael J. Fox documentary? And he said, yeah, of course. I mean, imagine you get that email. And it was just spectacular. I mean, everything about it was great because the budget was good, and working with Davis was amazing. The producers were great. Michael J. Fox and his family were the loveliest people. And it was just everything about it was good.
Yeah, it's such a lovely piece to kind of solidify in history, you know.
Yeah, and it's the thing everybody says that, you know, that everybody tries to act that you don't care and you're some indie filmmaker and what your parents think is bullshit. But it is very gratifying when you work with somebody like that your parents really understand, you know, how famous and transcendent they were in culture, you know? So obviously it's very hard. I mean, I'm sure it happens to you too and most people in this industry that those of us whose parents that don't work in entertainment, it's just impossible for them because a lot of stuff that we do, you can explain it, but it's impossible to comprehend, you know? It's so specific and unique. But
it's not even just family, it's also friends who don't understand the industry. It's just like a constant need of like telling people, explaining, you know, what is going on, justifying, and it's just like at some point it's just like you're not gonna get it, but at some point you might and you will, but for now, you know, you're not.
Yeah, but that's one. I mean, I'm 45 years old, so I remember he was a massive deal when I was a kid, and then Back to the Futures. But that's one that everybody. I mean, it's really hard to be. I mean, older than 35 years old in the world and not know who Michael J. Fox is. You know, so it was great. The premiere at Sundance was great. The release with Apple went really well. So yeah, that was definitely one of the highlights of my career.
And going back to the question, the topic of like family not understanding what the line of work that you do. When you were younger and when you decided to tell your parents, "Hey, I'm going to go into the film industry," how was that reaction?
My parents were very supportive.
Okay.
They just said, I mean, you have to work hard and you might as well. But they just said, I mean, they were very real. They said, you know, go with God. I mean, there's nobody that can help you here. So try. But they are. I mean, my parents are they're kind of bigger cinephiles than I am.
Yeah.
So in that sense, that they obviously thought it was interesting and cool, but like every parent, I mean, they were very concerned. You know, it's terrifying. If my kid tells me I'm going to do the same thing, then I'd also not be, you know,
I'd be worried.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, you're going to have to work a lot, you know, and in the world, so you might as well do something that you enjoy.
Definitely. And how do you think that your Mexican American heritage influenced your approach to storytelling and your approach to your work?
I mean, that's a good question. I think, I mean, I grew up in Juarez on the border. Mm-hmm. I live in El Paso now, Texas, on the American side, but I grew up on the Mexican side. And it is, I mean, northern Mexico is a very interesting place because it's very Mexican, but we're right on the border. Yeah. So it is very American influenced. So I was always we're so close to the border that when I was a kid, you get public access American TV. Right. Because you're, you know, less than a kilometer away from the border. So we were all of us, you know, that grow up in Juarez are very American influenced. But at the same time, you're always, I mean, every Mexican is very proud of our country's film heritage. Yeah. I think with all due, and I mean, I think in Mexican film in the last 20, 25 years has been, you know, going through a bit of a, you know, second golden age. You know, the first golden age in Mexican cinema was in the 50s, 60s. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of a mix, you know? Yeah. Very, very much a mix. Because when I was younger, I mean, now the streamers changed everything because there's massively budgeted. Now my Mexican producer friends, they all have these massive budgets from Netflix and Amazon. Yeah. Because series are very important, very popular in Mexico. It's similar to Spain, you know how in Netflix Spain they make shows for millions and millions of euros. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, I mean, it really is a mix, you know, it's like doc and narrative. It's half and half. Yeah.
And do you think that there's big differences between the American and Mexican film industry?
Not it. I mean, it's very similar. There's different intricacies, and it's like everything. The differences are cultural. For example, in Mexico, it's considered acceptable to do a 6-day in the week, but most people do a half day.
Yeah.
And that's, in the US right now, that's very difficult to pull off. Younger crews especially won't do that. I'm assuming that in Europe, very people can get away with that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one to get away with. Yeah,
and that is literally the biggest difference.
Yeah,
but everywhere else, it's very similar. I think it's closer. The way production flows and works is closer between American and Mexican crew than an American and a European crew. Right. And there it is very different by what my other people have told me.
And I was talking to a friend the other day that I mentioned that the film industry is kind of like a global language in a way that, if you can work, you can work as crew in Spain, and then, if you end up having a chance to go work in crew in the US or in Mexico or anywhere, there's a global kind of understanding of what needs to be done to get the job done. And it's, except the only differences might be like cultural differences and, permits and permissions and stuff might be different, but it's a industry that allows you to work really pretty much anywhere in a way.
Yeah, and I think and it's in most of Latin America too. I think crews in Latin America, and it changes, right? Because younger people take over older people. But there is, and it's good. There's been a lot of in the U.S. that people are very cognizant now of not working too long. Yeah, because already here a regular day is 12 hours. Yeah, and I feel it's that sometimes Mexican crews can be more permissive, and in the U.S. there's been a ton. Everybody now is directors, studio executives, crews. Yeah. Just very few people will allow you to do a 14, 15-hour day anymore.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to get away with that in Barcelona.
I'm sure that's never. You can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. And,
I did this movie called Anomalous. It was a Spanish production, but they filmed in New York. But they had to. There was Spanish, I think, federal government soft money. Yeah. So all the department heads had to have a Spanish passport. Yeah. And half of them were from Madrid and half were from Barcelona. Nice. So that was very interesting because they were very different. The way they got to the office, the time that they left the office. Yeah. The time of the lunch break, I won't say who did what, but it was as if they were from two different countries. Yeah,
no, that definitely. My experience in crews here are quite unique compared to.
Yeah, so but that's also kind of cool. I like that about filming abroad wherever I don't live. Yeah, that I did a James Franco Ana Villafaña movie in Cartagena in Colombia in 2022. And there, it's also interesting. There, it's the crews they're more similar to American crews than to Mexican crews. Yeah, and those are the closest big industries. Well, obviously Brazil and Argentina, right? But it's because since Narcos filmed there, the Netflix show, it's crazy because the Colombian tax incentive is close to 40%. So I remember when I was in Cartagena, there was I think 6 big budget American productions happening there. Wow. So obviously, the local crews, they pick up that they only work for, American studios now. Yeah. A local, whatever. My friend, Carolina Arciniegas, a great line producer in Colombia, she has much more experience working with Fox and Warner Brothers in 1 year than I've worked with, studios in most of my career. Because it's one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. I remember one time, we were staying at the Intercontinental in Cartagena, and the cruise went early call time. So breakfast it opened I think at 5:30, and I go downstairs with a couple of my crew, and there was 35 stunt coordinator SFX guys with their caps on. You know how you can tell right away that they all dress the same everywhere in the world. And they were all waiting because they had to. Their bus was picking them up at 6:15, and they were all waiting to eat. But it was crazy. I said, "Wow! This is This is the film industry spending money at its finest.
You can spot film crew a mile away.
Yeah, the way they dress and talk, and that's what I always tell my wife.
Yeah, definitely. And I've saw that a lot. You had a lot of films that you've been part of that have gone to different film festivals around the world. Do you think that there's a big difference between the European film festival circuit and the one in the American film circuit?
Oh yeah. I always say my by far my favorite festival is Rotterdam.
Yeah,
which is spectacular. Yeah, I had that is a true, that's a festival for cinephiles, run by cinephiles. It's amazing that
did you manage to go this year or?
No, I've been there. I've had 2 movies there, but I went just once, and it was by far my best festival experience. I mean, I wish it could always be like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of those are the 2 opposites: Sundance and Rotterdam.
Yeah.
and kind of the happy in between would be Toronto. Where Toronto has great crowds and cinephiles, and the market is good, but it's not. It's just the Sundance it's Hollywood on crack. And branding and agents and parties and everybody screaming and the ridiculous clothes, and it really is like that. And it's just in Europe, it's like it's more speed. It's much more civilized.
Yeah, and Rotterdam is your favorite one.
In Europe, I've been to Cannes and to Rotterdam. I mean, obviously Cannes is spectacular and it's the pinnacle and whatever. But Rotterdam is amazing. I would encourage anybody, wherever you are from the world, if you ever have a movie there, it is. And then it's so easy to get to. You from Amsterdam airport, you're there in a couple hours in a train, looking at beautiful beautiful landscape.
It's a 40-minute train from Amsterdam to Rotterdam.
But you can take the train from Amsterdam airport. So it's very practical.
And you can also fly into Rotterdam if you're coming in, like from Barcelona. I'm based in Barcelona, so if I wanted to, I could just fly over to Rotterdam directly, which is also a nice little. It's very accessible, and the film festival itself. I was there this February with Claudio, and it was fantastic. Great experience.
It's great. Do they still do that festival center in De Deulen or whatever it's called, in that building, and then everybody's there, and then that's by that big 3D cinema or IMAX, whatever.
Yeah, right in the city center, smack in the middle.
It's great. It's so much fun. It's
really well organized as well, and very international.
Yeah, it was actually I was there. It was 2013 or 14 when I was in Rotterdam, and back then I remember. So we're there, and it's usually more Latin American movies, right? That play there, or Asian movies. So it was the only American movies were our movie. It's called Valedictorian, and a movie that Nathan Silver directed. And Nathan back then was a big indie guy. Now he's rep by CAA, and his movie Jason Schwartzman movie sold to I think Sony Pictures Classics this year out of Sundance.
Fantastic.
But I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen him since I saw him in Rotterdam, and then I ran into him in Park City in January, and we were talking. He also loves that festival, about how amazing Rotterdam is.
No, it's definitely a great one, and when you look back at your career, and now that you're older and trying to find this work-life balance, how do you manage such a demanding career in film and your personal life? How do you find that balance?
I mean, it's very hard. I mean, I'm lucky. My wife is the most patient, nicest, understanding person, because you have to have. I mean, if you have children, my best advice is marry somebody that's amazing. Because they have to put up with you being gone a long time, which is very difficult. And then even if you're making a movie and where you reside, it's kind of even worse, because you'll be gone. You're also gone all the time. You're doing a 12, 14, 15-hour day. So it's very hard. I mean, that's the question I would love to. I think one thing that does help a lot is, it certainly improved my life, is doing both, going back and forth between doc and narrative. Yeah. Because you can, the rhythms of doc it's a little less unforgiving than narrative. But another thing that works, method, is also friends that do a lot of commercials, and then they'll go back and forth. It's hard if you can figure out a way where you only do 1 or 2 movies, be the narrative or docs a year, and then the rest of your time you figure out how to make money in another way.
Yeah.
That the people that I know that do that tend to be happier than if you just go, movie to movie to movie.
Yeah.
But it's hard though, because if you only get calls to make money that way, then you have to make money.
Yeah.
So it's
challenging one.
I would be that, and I always encourage people to. I mean, now it's changed a little, but when I was starting, it was such a taboo of working in the commercial space. Everybody would say, "Oh, commercials, that's terrible," and blah blah blah. But I think commercials are amazing. You should, when you're young, that's and the great thing about commercials is that's a pretty economic recession. Whatever the term is, like they can. It's you can. They're very. Sometimes the market goes up or down unless commercials are made. But it's not, commercials aren't like indie film, where the industry can shut down when there's a strike or something happens. Commercials will always be made. So
the root of capitalism.
So
it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, and commercials are. I mean, if especially on the production side, they're great gigs because they're very well paid and
quick turnaround.
And the shoot's only a couple days. Yeah. So figure out a way to. But I get it also. People that only do commercials, or a lot of them tend to be miserable. Yeah. And I also understand it's very, because I mean, very very few people are happy just working on the ad agency side. But I feel like a lot of the ones that have figured out, kind of how to do digital marketing and with a little branding, and then you mix in a film here or there. I think that's kind of the only way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. You got to find this balance between earning money, following passion projects, and having a social life or having a family life. And just to wrap it up, what advice would you give to any aspiring producers who want to achieve success, whether that be in the U.S., Mexico, or in Europe?
I think you just have to see. I mean, be very honest with yourself. And the way Brian Grazer, Ron Howard's production partner and at Imagine, describes it is amazing, because he said he got to Hollywood and I think he either wrote the script to Splash, to that comedy, or he hired the writer, but he controlled the rights. So he asked somebody for advice when he was young and he's in Hollywood, and the person told him, "Well, what do you have?" And he said, "What do you mean, what do I have? What can you control?" And he said, "Well, this script." And then so he said, "Well, then go make it." So if you have a script, or you have access to a script, and you just have to go for it. It's impossible to know if you'll succeed or not if you don't try. Right. So that's step one, right? You have this script, or you have an idea for a documentary, or you have some amazing documentary or archival footage. Then you see, okay, so this is what I have. What's the next steps? Then you have to decide, do I want to direct this, or do I want to find a director to direct this with? And then that's something to it, and then that leads to something else, and then once you find your director, you try to get the money. You have to just be you have to be honest with yourself, and don't assume anything. Don't assume that your godfather will give you money to make your movie. Nobody owes you shit. Nobody's gonna help you, and nobody should help you. Because you have to figure it out by yourself. I know that's a very that's the whole American thing and pro business, but that's the reality. It's a very difficult. It's much harder because people that don't work in film, they're used to investing money in different ventures. It's easier to get money out of somebody to set up some crazy website company as opposed to make a movie. Right. So that, right? So what do? You have to try to make a movie or whatever, a series or whatever it may be, with a small budget. So why? Because if the budget is small, it's much easier to raise. Yeah. I did the Rotterdam movie, the first one that I couldn't go to Rotterdam. It's called Haley, and that was the lead producer on that was Julio Chavez Montes, and that was his first movie. He financed it. He hired me to line produce it. Very good friend of mine. I'm in contact with him to this day. And Julio premiered. He won the Palme d'Or 2 years ago. He was one of the producers. Yeah, he was one of the producers on the what's it called? The amazing Scandinavian director, the Triangle of Sadness director. And I met him when he was his first movie, but he did this. He co-wrote a script He partnered up with a director to direct it, and he found somebody to give him $70,000, and we made a movie, and now he's one of the top producers in Latin America. So I think you have to be very practical about it,
And from the sound of it, also, break down everything to small, manageable pieces, and go one by one and just go for it, rather than try and see this as this gigantic.
Yeah, and then you have to understand that if it's the word fail is very subjective. If it doesn't work out. And if it doesn't work out, you say, okay, well, now what do I want to do? Do I want to try to do another movie? No. Do I like the industry? Yes. Maybe I want to try to be an executive. At that point, it's much easier to get any kind of job because people will see. Like if somebody approaches me and says, hey, I want to work on one of your sets, and I say, what have you done? And he says, well, I just made this movie. It didn't work out. I'd hire that person in 2 seconds, because you have to, for all kinds of reasons, and that's fine. And then maybe you can work for somebody else or work on somebody else's set, and as in whatever capacity, then you try to make your movie in a couple of years again. Yeah. It's that, I think also understanding that it isn't a zero-sum game. Nothing about it is extreme. Everything can change very quickly. The only thing that I do know is that in order to progress and in order to make films, you have to make films. I mean, it sounds stupid, but you can't, nobody's going to get anywhere by sitting at home and watching movies all day and criticizing other people.
Yeah. No, definitely. I agree.
I think it's that, but it can be many things. It can be if you want to be an editor, or if you want to work in post, or if you want to be a screenwriter, then that's cool. Write a script.
Yeah. I mean, you got to write and you got to edit.
That's why I was talking to. I was talking to a friend in El Paso the other day, and he was kind of sad because we tried to get something going at Amazon. It didn't work out, and then he said, "Yeah, well, what do I do?" And I said, "Well, write another script."
Yeah.
And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, man. I mean, what the hell else are you going to do?"
Yeah.
Says, "Oh, but this sucks." And I said, "All right, man. I mean, that's all I can tell you to do. If you don't want to write another script, then don't write it. But the only way for you to make something is, it sucked. It was terrible. Yeah. We went through the whole process. We tried to get it going for a year. It didn't work out. We got close." I said, "Listen, and the reality is that is going to happen much more often than the opposite. Yeah. That's just the nature of the business. It really is. It's very hard." So
it definitely is.
But then that didn't work out. So what do? Either you write something else, you resurrect something that you've written before, or you partner up, buy, finance somebody else's script. Yeah. The great thing about narrative and documentary filmmaking is that it's kind of the perfect marriage between creativity and logistics. Yeah. Because you have a creative product, and then you have to figure out how to make it. Yeah. And the cool thing is, and everybody should embrace, you can lean into either side. There's room in the logistics side, production side for people like me, and there's room in the creative side for people that are more creative. Yeah. It isn't none of it is exclusive. So I think just that, just look at, always think about, if you're you think about number 2 when you're on number 1, don't think. And then a lot of people get tangled up, and then we're going to finish the movie now, and then we're going to edit it, and then it's going to get into Sundance, and then we're going to go to Park City, and then strawberries and champagne. But if we didn't finish it on time, then Sundance isn't going to accept it. That is the dumbest way to think. All of that is out of your control. Yeah. And the other thing is, you have to understand that once you make the movie, it's very hard to understand. But very few people in the world, in Hollywood and everywhere, have any control over how your movie is distributed and if it'll be successful. Yeah, and you just have to understand that. That's definitely. Also important. It's over. When you make it, you give it to a company, and then sometimes it goes great, and other times it's horrible. But there's very little you can do to change that.
And also the public perception is completely out of your hands. It's like you think you might have worked on your masterpiece, and you put it out in the world, and you do not get to choose whether the audience likes it or hates it.
It's done. I mean, that's the amazing part about Rotterdam. You go to that festival, and it's full of, then you look at the audience, and the majority are 65-year-old Dutch people, that are obsessed with movies. And they can't stop looking at the screen. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a lot of fun, but again, I mean, the advice is just get out of wherever you live and make something.
Yeah, and the ones who persist are the ones who normally have the longest careers. So.
And the energy of when people know that you're making something, when it becomes clear either in the financing phase or in the production phase that this movie will happen. So if you're a money person and you want to join, you better join, because otherwise somebody else will join. Or if you're a crew member, and that energy, that there is a lot to say about getting the train moving.
Yeah.
Where it stops, where somebody, hey, can you call 10 people? At some point, somebody will agree to help you make the movie.
Definitely.
It just becomes an exercise in persistence.
For sure. And what I've been, a lot of mentors of mine have been telling me as well, is just keep going. At some point, something will crack and something will open. So
yeah, and you see in both, and the majority of it's very hard when it's harder when you're a director, right? Because you'll be judged on your movies, but if you see the overwhelming majority of filmmakers, their first movies aren't their best movies.
Yeah.
Then because they learn and then they apply the skills they learn, then they become better and better and better. So that's the other thing. Don't think that you have to direct and or produce or write a masterpiece at your first go. That's not going to happen, and that's okay.
And I think that's what people should, and I include myself there as well, is that we should be okay with the fact that our first might not be the best and probably won't be the best,
But that's fine. That's very hard. Very, very few people to have when they come out of the gate. It's great. I think, and there's a lot of, when I was starting, for example, there was nothing existed like NPA.
Yeah.
Your guys' organization, and I think that's phenomenal. What you guys do and how you help producers, and just now there really is no excuse. Also on the producing side, because now there's organizations like NPA that can help you actually make something.
Yeah.
When I started, I mean, it's still, there's kind of something like that in the U.S. But people have to take advantage of that, and everybody in Holland should really, any producer that is interested in producing should get in touch with you guys.
Definitely. And I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up. And thank you so much, Javier, for joining us today and sharing all these knowledge and insights. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
You got it. Keep making movies.